Good morning, everyone. We are live. Welcome to my spare room and to Lindsey's office. Lindsey's in Hampshire. I'm in Yorkshire. We're joining you by the wonder of technology. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Heidi Mavir. I'm the founder of EOTAS Matters. We work supporting parents and carers in neurodivergent homes who are fighting for provision for their children and young people in school, particularly autistic neurodivergent kids. And over the coming weeks and months, and over the past few weeks and months, I've been chatting with other people who are working in the SEND space, because it's not just all about what I have to offer, and I want to let you know the other people that are doing amazing work. So I'm talking with Lindsey Sloan this morning, and we're going to talk a little bit about Lindsey's work and how you might benefit from the work that she's doing. And I'm hoping that you'll get some inspiration and some information from what she's got going on. So good morning, my love. How are you?
Good morning. I'm very well, thank you.
Good.
Very nice to be here.
I'm glad to be here with you. Your lighting is far superior to mine.
I'm just sat in front of a window.
Yeah, well, I probably should have twizzled myself, but it's too late for a twizzle, so we'll go with the Phantom of the Opera lighting.
Maybe it's a bit brighter down south.
Always, but cheaper in the north. I don't know what I'd rather have. So, okay, so let's get to know you a little bit. Can you tell us a little bit about you, what you do? Let's have a little bit of your background and how you ended up here. And while you're doing that, I'm going to share this.
Okay. I began working with children straight out of school, so I didn't go to college or university or anything. I was not the best pupil or the brightest pupil by any means, so I went straight into work. I went through a government scheme, straight into school, loved doing that, and then did that for many years, working with children who had special needs, and that would have been, I'm 56, so that would have been the 80s, wouldn't it? So a very different kind of school environment then. But then did that for a long time, and then had my family. I have 2 neurodivergent children. My son, who is an adult now, he was diagnosed at about 10 years old with ADHD and dyslexia. And then my daughter, who's 28 now, she was diagnosed with dyslexia about 8 years old, and then as an adult she's identified as autistic, and I think she's absolutely found herself actually by understanding that, and then decided then I better start doing a bit of studying or something, because if I want to work with children, I'm going to have to get some something that will give families confidence in actually talking to me about their children. So started studying with the Open University, went into Portage Home Teaching, or Portage Home Visiting. Some people may be aware that's a home teaching service for families who have very young children whose needs of their development's delayed. And that over the years moved on to me becoming the head of SEND services for a large local authority. Did that for a number of years, managed all things EHCP, and I was that horrible person probably that many of your families have worked with in the past or tried to. Yeah, exactly that. I was that person. I knew I was part of the problem. I knew it from as soon as I started getting into the EHCP world. I knew that what we were doing was required by the government to do, and we had to meet their requirements. We were under immense pressure not to spend money because we didn't have money, and yet we were seeing family after family after family in such distress and such it was like they were on an island on their own, and they didn't know how on earth to get off it. Nobody was giving them an oar, never mind a boat. It was impossible. And that took its toll, not only obviously on the families I was working with or saying no to, as it seemed to be every day, but the schools that the children were going to. I was saying no to schools because we were under such immense pressure not to spend money. And in the middle of all of that are these families who didn't know what to do, and their children were not having the best start to school, or they were falling out of school or crashing out of school sometimes, because things just went so wrong. And it was taking an immense toll on my health and well-being. So a year ago, thought I've got to leave this. That was a huge decision, because I was really proud of how far I'd come without having any kind of formal education bar kind of high school. or secondary school. So yeah, left that a year ago and thought, right, actually, I could tip all of that information I've learned, all of that training, all of that learning, the system, the processes, the finance, the working with children directly that I did for many, many years. I could actually flip that on its head and give it. I say, I am running a business, but, turn it on its head and make sure it's the families I'm giving that information and stuff to. And that has been life changing. I bloody love it. I absolutely love waking up in the morning and just thinking all of that information I have about this, I can come and pour this into the families I work with.
And you can make a difference there, right? Whereas I imagine that in the previous role, you probably felt like your hands were tied a lot of the time.
It was hideous, Heidi. I mean, I know that job's got to be there, and I have many colleagues who are still there, and they're working bloody hard, in local authorities, and some of them are doing they're doing it for the best possible reasons. But some aren't. Some are not in there for helping anybody, I don't think. And plus, I'd find myself in a situation where I was in one meeting, I was defending why I was spending money on the children that Send reform was written for, and I was being challenged by the DfE, who were the very people who wrote the bloody law, that they sit in front of you and say, you're going to bankrupt the local authority if you carry on this way. So it was really wonderful to launch Navigating Send together. And I called it that because I knew when I was working with families in that role, it was navigating it that was so flipping difficult, because the bureaucracy is just one block after another. And I used to think, God, I've been doing this for years and I've been trained in it, and I still have to keep going back and thinking, what's next? What do I do? Families aren't given that kind of guidance. No. They're not given the roadmap to what this is. They're given the odd flow chart. But
that's the challenge, isn't it? I feel like from the beginning, from the outset, the way that the system is structured and grown over time, families are at a disadvantage and are coming into conversations. And that this was me naively thinking, okay, I've got a kid who can't go to school anymore. This is the route. This is the pathway for getting some support. Naively thought, wasn't even thinking about money, but naively thought I would go into a meeting and people would go,
someone would help you.
Yeah, don't worry, we've got this. We know how worried you are. We know how scary this is. We know how distressed your child is. We're going to work this out. And instead was faced with, no. Are you sure it's not your parenting? No.
We put on course.
How long have you been a single parent? No. You know what I mean? Like, and I was just, so same as you. I kind of made that decision early on that the work I would do would be at a parental level, at a carer level, so that I could scaffold those parents and carers through the system rather than trying to change the system from inside. And I know there are people doing that. When we're eliciting change, it's either in above beyond, right? That's where you make the change. I couldn't be in that system. I did try on the board of governors and it nearly killed me. So I decided that I would come from the outside and we'll help. So that's what you're doing, right?
It's exactly. And I'm working now with families, so I might start working with them when they have like a 1-year-old and they're just noticing that their development's not they're not following a linear developmental pathway, and they're not quite sure why, and they're not quite sure what to do about that. So they might call me and say, well, we'll just come and have a little play and see what's happening. But then, so we'll do that, and I'll be going in and I'll be doing, I'll take toys and I'll be a complete nutter with them for an hour every week, and we'll work on their language or work on their just play skills really, and teaching them how to learn in a way that works for them. But then that leads into, okay, well, now we've got to think about school, Lindsay. What are we going to do about school? How are they going to cope? What are they going to need? How will I get what they need? Who will say that I can or can't have it? And so we start then. I can bring in all of that knowledge of the EHCP process and say, right, this is the law. This is what you're entitled to. This is how we do it. We don't need to follow that route. We can follow this route. The law says you can, and it's, the feeling of being able to say the law is on your side. It won't feel like it, but it is. We've got to make it work for you.
Yeah.
That can be a controversial comment, but I do believe it's on the parent side. It's the delivery of the law that is creating these, bureaucratic barriers. So yeah, but then I'll have a family, or very often will say to me, well, how am I supposed to know that? You've just told me to do that because you know that that's something that could happen. But how was I meant to know that? And that's where it's like, I don't always have the answers as to how you're supposed to know it, but I know it. So let's get you through that next hoop and let's 100%. Get to yeah.
So the majority of the families that you tend to work with are preschool families, younger children?
The majority are at the moment, yes. Although one of the other roles that I had in the local authority was I was writing the strategy for preparing for adulthood. And I loved working with the older young people and thinking about what adulthood needed, how we were going to support them to start being prepared for this world outside of education. Families were very often saying, it's all, school's not great, but at least there's school. And then when we leave school, it's what the hell happens next? What's their life going to be as an adult? So I loved that. And so some of the work I do is supporting families whose children are approaching that, so 16 plus, and the EHCP is just not fit for purpose. It's not preparing them for adulthood. It's not got the right things in it, or it's maybe even not been changed for years. So supporting families to know that. And then I think that's also something I'm going to kind of get more into as well. So I'll be working with them in the early years. And then
they're like funneling them in and funneling them out.
That's the plan. That's the plan. Yeah.
I think that's so key, especially the early years stuff, because I know that had there been people around my son who knew what to look for, he was a pretty obvious presentation of neurodivergence as a baby. Late to speak, late to walk, all of that stuff. Not that I was concerned, and not that it was actually a genuine concern in any real terms, but there was talk about, he's not hitting milestones, but that was kind of the end of it, and had there been people around us who had been able to say, this is what that probably means, then we might not have gone into a school system not knowing that about him. And we might not have had to wait 8 years for him to spectacularly crash out of school and then be playing catch up. If we'd had some of those accommodations in place.
And then have to heal all of that.
Exactly. And all if we'd had that if we'd arrived in reception on the first day and I'd been able to say, we think he's probably autistic. Then I'm not saying that would have been completely without its issues, but I don't think we would have had the nightmare.
Well, then the power's a bit more in your hands, isn't it? I know when my son got his diagnosis at 10, which was back in, he's 32 now. So maths is not my strong
early
point.
2000s.
It's fair to say. I remember I had been reading him a couple of books because I thought that's what we were looking at. I thought we were looking at ADHD and dyslexia, but I couldn't. They kept telling me it was behavior. It's behavior. He's a naughty boy. He doesn't do anything he's told. He's impossible to teach. Blah blah blah. All that crap. And I started reading him books about ADHD. I didn't have a diagnosis or anything like that, but I started reading him books. And I remember I was reading a book and it was about a little boy in school who always looked out the window. Always looked out the window. And when he was called back into the class, his attention, he would get, told off, look back at it. And I remember my son going, that's me, Mum. That's me. That's what I do. Then the day we got the diagnosis, I went home and I thought, the power's in his hands now. It's not in everyone else's hands in respect of we're not going to give you a diagnosis. We're not going to assess. It's in his hands. He has a name and a tangible thing that explains why some things are difficult or different for him. And my daughter was the same when she was diagnosed with dyslexia. I don't know what I missed as she was growing up in respect of as an adult. She's so right. She's identifying as autistic without putting herself through any adult sort of assessment. Not that I've got anything against that, but she's chosen not to. But what the hell did I miss then? I didn't. I'm a person in that world, working in that world.
You were the head of a SEND service, and even you didn't know what to look for.
Nope.
What hope do we have?
Well, I think it's interesting. It tells you a lot about girls, doesn't it? Because in boys, you know, he was always the troublemaker in school. It was always, Mrs. Sloan, can you come in, please, and have a chat? Every pickup time. We were so lucky that we were in the army because that changed that direction. But my daughter was always the good girl. She was quiet, didn't push anyone's buttons, didn't want to be in trouble, knuckled down. Luckily, didn't have any, didn't have a level of difficulty that really caused her a great deal of challenge in school. Because if you're a good girl and you do your work, you kind of go under
the radar.
Yeah.
But that in itself, I guess, that's one of the things that I think is really interesting in terms of, you know, kids who are socialized as girls. Because I don't believe it's inherently a gender thing. I think it's about how we socialize those kids.
Right.
But kids who are socialized as girls are taught to double mask from the beginning, right? So we expect a level of compliance, politeness, you know, adaptability, quietness, you know, all of that from girls.
And that's what she did.
Yeah, and so they're already being taught to mask. So that double layer. I was speaking to my son the other day. He works a lot with young people, and we were driving back to uni, and he was saying that he's noticed that girls, like, he was saying it's really sad because, like, kids 6 and 7-year-olds are so full of joy and so happy, and then high school, as they progress to high school, there's like a change, and there's like stereotypical. In his experience, it's like stereotypical dynamics in boy groups. He was talking about the popular boy and his right-hand man.
Yeah.
You can see the right-hand man is like super anxious and he's looking to him all the time.
Yeah.
Like, and like the main boy is the right-hand man's best mate, but the main boy is not bothered for the right-hand man, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, but he was saying that girls, they're just all really quiet.
Yeah.
And like, he knows that away from adults, there's other dynamics at play, but around adults, they're this big homogenous mess of like, well, not even a mess, just a big homogenous glob of the same kids. And that's the masking, right? So
it has to be, doesn't it? Because, and how hard are they working at that?
Right.
How hard are they? What does that? There were that many families who, when I was in the local authority, would say when they get home they fall apart. When they get home from school, you don't know what you know all that. And we would have the school saying, well, they're all right at school. You know, they're all right at school, and the family saying, no, they're not. They're just hiding what they're actually feeling, which is terror or anxiety,
exhaustion.
Or get me out, you know. But they're holding it together.
That was me. That was me. I was that quiet, compliant, bookish, clever teacher's pet girl. Yeah. And I was an absolute nightmare at home.
At home. Yeah.
And like, my mum would come back from parents' evening and say, I don't know what's happening. Like, how is this? I'm really pleased that they're pleased with you, but what are you talking about?
That's
what's going on? Yeah. Like, I would like lob stuff out of windows. I would smash things. I would run away from home on a pretty much weekly basis. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah. So talk to me about, go ahead. Sorry.
No. That's.
So talk to me about what you're working on, like, currently. Because I know you've got some families that you're working with one-to-one, and you're doing bits.
I've got families I work with one-to-one. I have online or telephone consultations with families who are going through the EHC process and have a particular kind of. So some of them contact me because they think their child's about, and they're young children. So, you know, they're in key stage 1, for goodness sake, and they're starting to not be able to attend. And the processes and strategies that are being used maybe to get them to attend are not going to be the ones that work for these children. So families are calling and we're having those kind of conversations. I can go to a meeting with a school and be that kind of advocate for the family. And And they're also, I'm reading draft plans. I know you do some of that, Heidi, as well. And also supporting them. I don't tend to do appeals with families, but I do tend to take them through what they can expect and how they can hopefully come to a conclusion without having to go to the actual case, court appeals, SENDIS thing. And then the other aspects of what I'm doing is I'm going to be launching a freebie soon, which will be all about the kind of support that you can expect to receive in mainstream school without an EHCP. Because that tends to be a lot of the questions that parent, well, am I entitled? I can't ask for that, can I? Because I haven't got a EHC plan. Yes, you bloody can. Yeah, there's a lot you can expect to receive without an EHCP.
Especially pertinent now with the conversations about we're maybe going to take EHCPs off mainstream kids. So especially important that we know what our rights are.
But it just shows how some schools are so much better at training their staff to understand different ways of working with children, and how some don't prioritize that. And you can see that when you go to the schools and you talk to the families about what strategies may have been supporting them to get in, like just leave it screaming and go trauma.
Touch the gate.
So working on that, so that will be a freebie I'll be able to launch, and then that hopefully will lead to what will be in a I don't know how long, but a membership that I want to launch that will, I think you mentioned it earlier, Heidi, I want to be able to start with families when they're really young, and really see them through all of these different points in life, right the way into launching into a life as an adult. And that's the kind of thing that I'm teaching myself, I'm learning about, and as in, what would families want out of that? What are those key points in that child's life and that family's life that are holy crap moments? We're going to need help, but
that ongoing, like more holistic approach to, like you were saying, like we have this kind of funnel and this kind of like pressure cooker while they're in school, but then, like you were saying, you've got 2 adult neurodivergent kids. I've got an adult neurodivergent child. I'm a neurodivergent adult. What happens to us when we get to 16, and we want to
absolutely. And the thing is, it's got to start in primary. We've got to focus on the life skills. So I can't get a school to scrap all the stupid subjects that are not going to be important to this child's life, but I can talk to them about, okay, is that really something we need to focus on? You do have the power to let some of that curriculum go, so why don't we do that? And why don't we fix our vision on the skills that actually will be transferable as an adult? And if we build on them from the very beginning, right the way through their time at school, and then we get the EHCPs right from kind of 14 onwards, as the law says we should, and we get the right outcomes in there. I've seen the most ridiculous outcomes in EHC plans for kids that, parents will say to me, I don't give a damn if they get their GCSEs. I want them to have a happy, healthy and busy life as an adult. How do I get that? How will the EHCP help me get that?
I was speaking to one of my coaching clients this week, and she's got a young person who is clinically vulnerable and has significant health needs.
Right.
And she was saying it's a constant battle to have conversations with people about her EHCP when they're all about, like, this child has really high support needs and won't be able to live independently, has carers, and has a great life, and is clinically really vulnerable. And they're saying, well, maybe we can put her in for a functional skills. And mum's saying, well, maybe we could just try and keep her out of hospital.
Alive?
It's crazy. But like you, I'm kind of the opinion that parents need to know that you can say, actually, no, we're not going to do SATs. We're not required to do SATs. You're going to take our kids off the SATs.
I'm not going to do a language.
We're
not going to do a language. My kid doesn't want to do a language. We're not going to do a language. But we could use that hour a week
to do something else. To explore something that they're really interested in.
Let's learn about money.
Yeah.
Let's learn about money. Let's teach them how to use money.
Yeah.
You know,
100%.
so I remember exactly that scenario with a family whose daughter was profoundly affected with a health condition that she had. Really, it affected everything in life. But she could also have a great quality of life. But you had to focus on the right things. You know, stop
And what's
thinking
important
about,
to the family is not always what's important to the tick box
no,
list.
no,
You know,
no.
so it's about being able to advocate for that as well.
Yeah, yeah.
I am grateful that, first of all, the burnout didn't bring you to your knees and finish your
Thank
career.
you.
And secondly, that you've brought this expertise and this lived experience into the realm of working directly with families, because we need more parent carer advocates like you who are doing this work. And I see this happening, and it excites me, because I think there is such a wealth of experience within the SEND community, and, you know, parent carers and parent carer professionals offering other support to parent carers. This is what will make the change. This is what, on an individual, family by family, one by one basis, we can make a difference. And I'm really grateful that you're doing that. I think it's wonderful. So if people want to find you, people want to find you, they can find you on socials, right? So
they can find me on Instagram, Navigating SEND Together. They can find me on Facebook, and obviously I have the website that tells you a little bit more about what I do. Instagram and Facebook are a little bit more for showing. So there might be the odd video of me working with a child, or there might be me yabbering away about toilet training.
Because you kind of do things in themes, don't you? You're doing sort of series on toilet training currently.
Before school, yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I'm not the greatest at social media, so I'm learning.
You know, like done is better than perfect, right?
That's what I'm learning. That's what I'm learning. Yeah.
For almost anything in life.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Lindsey. I'm excited to see what comes next. People who are watching this on replay or who are watching this live, please go and find Lindsey. Give her a follow on the socials, and keep an eye on what she's doing. As and when her bits and pieces are released into the world, I will make sure they are shared with my audience, because I really love what you're doing. Stay with me in the green room and we'll say goodbye. But for now, everyone watching live or on replay, thanks for joining us. We'll see you all again soon. Take care, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.